Have you ever worked a job so isolated, so eerie, that you couldn't shake the feeling someone or something was watching you? The quiet of the night shift is supposed to be peaceful, right? But what happens when that silence is broken by things that don't make sense? From a mysterious doorbell at 3 a.m. to a gunman covered in blood, I've survived some of the scariest, most unexplainable experiences. But trust me, what I've learned from these encounters will leave you questioning what's real and what's lurking in the dark. For years, I worked the night shift at various places, each one more eerie than the last. I don't do it anymore, but the memories of those long, silent hours still haunt me. The strangeness, the uncertainty, and that ever-present fear that something just wasn't right. It was something that never quite left me. One particular experience that still keeps me up at night happened when I worked as the sole caregiver in a dementia unit at a residential care facility. I was in charge on weekends, with 15 residents, people who were vulnerable, confused, and often lost in their own world. It was a tough job, not just physically, but emotionally draining. The isolation of working the night shift was its own kind of torture. I'd check in on the residents, make sure they were settled, and do whatever I could to make them feel safe. But one night, around 3 a.m., everything changed. I had just finished my rounds, checking in on each resident to make sure they were okay. Everyone was quiet, settled, resting. Everything seemed peaceful. But that peace didn't last. Then it happened. The doorbell rang. It was a sound that immediately sent a wave of panic through me. I froze, my heart racing in my chest. This was a secure facility. There should have been no reason for someone to be ringing the doorbell at 3 a.m. My mind spun, trying to make sense of it, but nothing made sense. I walked to the window, my hands shaking slightly as I peered outside, scanning the parking lot. But there was nothing. No one. I took a deep breath and tried to convince myself it was just a trick of my tired mind. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the exhaustion was getting to me. But then just 10 minutes later, it happened again. My stomach dropped. I walked to the window again, and this time I saw it. A dark sedan parked across the street. My heart began to pound in my chest. I snapped a quick photo of it, just in case. Something inside me told me that something was wrong, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. But I had no time to dwell on it. I turned back to my station, trying to distract myself. That's when I sat back down with Mrs. Jenkins, one of my more demented residents. She was always so sweet, though often confused. She was a little unpredictable, but she had a certain warmth to her. I sat down next to her, trying to smile, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at me. She looked up at me with a gentle expression. "What did the gentleman want, dear?" she asked. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Mrs. Jenkins had been asleep when I left to check the door. How did she know? Was she hallucinating again, or was something more sinister going on? My chest tightened, and I quickly tried to brush it off. It was probably just her condition, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It wasn't just her question. It was the way she said it. So calm, so certain. Then the doorbell rang again. I couldn't ignore it anymore. My legs were shaking as I stood up and walked to the window. I was terrified of what I might see, yet I couldn't stop myself from looking. That's when I saw it. A shadow, moving across the front door. And then a figure. Someone standing right outside, staring directly at me through the window. My blood ran cold. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. I screamed. The world seemed to close in around me, the fear suffocating. Mrs. Jenkins started to stir, but I barely noticed. My thoughts were racing too fast, spinning out of control. I grabbed my phone and called the police, my hands trembling as I dialed. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived, their presence a slight relief. But even then, I couldn't shake the dread gnawing at me. They did a quick sweep of the building, but found nothing, no sign of the person. But as they spoke to me, I felt my blood run colder. They told me that just down the road, a woman's house had been broken into. She had been attacked while she slept, her house ransacked, and the thief looking for drugs. I couldn't stop myself from wondering, was that person who tried to get into the facility the same person? Someone who had been targeting us for what was kept inside? But what haunted me even more was how 2 of my residents, who had no way of seeing the door, had known something was wrong. Mrs. Jenkins and another resident had sensed the danger before I did. It felt like something out of a horror movie, like they were somehow trying to protect me. I could still feel the chills running down my spine. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived, their presence a slight relief, but even then I couldn't shake the dread gnawing at me. They did a quick sweep of the building, but found nothing, no sign of the person. But as they spoke to me, I felt my blood run colder. They told me that just down the road a woman's house had been broken into. She had been attacked while she slept, her house ransacked, and the thief looking for drugs. I couldn't stop myself from wondering, was that person who tried to get into the facility the same person? Someone who had been targeting us for what was kept inside? But what haunted me even more was how 2 of my residents, who had no way of seeing the door, had known something was wrong. Mrs. Jenkins and another resident had sensed the danger before I did. It felt like something out of a horror movie, like they were somehow trying to protect me. I could still feel the chills running down my spine. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something far worse. And not long after I left that job, they refused to hire a second person for the night shift, and I just couldn't shake the fear anymore. It was the kind of fear that eats at you when you're alone, in a dark, empty building with no one to hear your cries for help. I thought that working at a water treatment plant would be a different experience, something more predictable. But I was wrong. It was located in the middle of nowhere, an isolated facility surrounded by fields and trees. It was just me on the graveyard shift. The job was simple enough: monitor equipment, adjust settings if needed, and make sure everything ran smoothly. But the solitude, being so far from everything, felt heavy. One night around 2:30 a.m., I was sitting in the control room, my mind wandering as I played my Nintendo DS to pass the time. The silence was almost overwhelming, only interrupted by the sound of my game. But then, it happened. A voice from behind me. "Get on the ground." I turned around and my heart nearly stopped. A man was standing there holding a gun. Blood was dripping from his body, as though he had been injured. Panic surged through me as my mind tried to comprehend the situation. He must have climbed the barbed wire fence to get to me. How else could he have gotten in? He shouted at me again, his voice frantic. "Get on the ground." I didn't hesitate. I dropped to my knees, my body shaking. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew it wasn't good. The man came closer, his face twisted with desperation. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm sorry, but I have to do this." His words made no sense. Why was he apologizing? Was he going to kill me? Was this a robbery? I handed him everything I had, my wallet, my truck keys, my phone. I felt completely powerless, trapped in the grip of fear. He tied me up with duct tape, my wrists and ankles bound so tightly that I could hardly breathe. I still had no idea what he wanted or why he was doing this. Was I going to die tonight? Was this the end? But then, after a few agonizing minutes, he backed away. "I'm sorry," he muttered again before turning and walking out. I could hear my truck starting up, the sound of the engine rumbling through the silence. I sat there in shock, my heart racing. What had just happened? Was I really going to survive this? Eventually, I freed myself from the duct tape and called the police. They arrived quickly, but even after everything was over, I couldn't shake the fear. I learned later that the man had escaped from a prison transport a few days earlier. He was on the run, desperate, and had walked miles to get to the water treatment plant. I couldn't help but wonder, what if he had decided to do something worse? What if I hadn't been able to get free? But even after that, I kept finding myself in strange situations, things I couldn't explain. The scariest of them all happened at a hotel I worked at in South Carolina. During the summer, it was filled with families, but during the off-season, it attracted some less desirable guests. I worked the night shift, which was often quiet, but one night something happened that changed everything. The police thought it was a failed robbery attempt, but I couldn't stop wondering if it was something more personal. Had I been targeted? Was someone out for revenge? I'll never know. That was just a glimpse into the dark and twisted world of the night shift. If you're still awake after hearing these spine-chilling stories, hit that like button and let me know which one freaked you out the most in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story that could have you double-checking every locked door. Remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't the ones we see, but the ones we feel lurking just beyond our sight. Stay safe and sleep with one eye open. The police thought it was a failed robbery attempt, but I couldn't stop wondering if it was something more personal. Had I been targeted? Was someone out for revenge? I'll never know. That was just a glimpse into the dark and twisted world of the night shift. If you're still awake after hearing these spine-chilling stories, hit that like button and let me know which one freaked you out the most in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story that could have you double-checking every locked door. Remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't the ones we see, but the ones we feel lurking just beyond our sight. Stay safe and sleep with one eye open.